What is up, guys and girls, and welcome to another episode of Just Talking To. And today we have the first ever female that we have had on the show. So say hi to Danielle from Monarchs and Malarkey podcast. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. It's a bit warm here today. I don't know what it's like over. You're in Ohio, is it? Is it Ohio?
We're in Utah.
Utah.
Yeah.
I know it was a four-lettered state. I couldn't remember.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about yourself first, so we can get like an idea of what you're into and all that.
Okay. So I am a perpetual student. I got a bachelor's degree just a little while ago, and I'm currently working on another bachelor's degree and a master's degree, and I'm now teaching literacies and composition at our university. So that keeps me pretty busy. I have 2 kids and a small farm. I've got 13 different animals I'm raising. I love to read, especially. I love history, which is why we started our podcast. And I do play some video games. I'm not nearly as into it as my husband and my son, but there are a few games that I'm very devoted to. I love all things Disney. I mean, I know it's kind of blurry, but got a lot of Disney stuff behind me there. I'm a huge Marvel nut, go to a lot of Comic-Cons and things like that.
Ooh,
so
yeah. I'm just literally going through, because I've never really been interested in the superhero stuff, but recently I've found a love for it. I don't know why, but I've started watching. Well, I say started. I'm most of the way through now. The Marvel movies in chronological order, not like
I've been following you on Twitter, going through that. I've been really delighted. I like your responses and reactions. It's that.
I'm at the first Spider-Man, which is a bit of a gut wrencher knowing that he's gone now. But it'll be fun to see how they work that, because it's not like he's actually gone anywhere. It's just they can't use him anymore, isn't it? Which sucks a bit. So how did you get into your podcasting and why history?
My degree was in anthropology, and there's a big history component there, but my dad just raised us loving history, and I especially was interested in knowing real history. We say that history is written by the winners, by the conquerors, and I wanted to get a feel for what actually happened. And along the way with my degree, I got really big into what we call biological anthropology or medical anthropology, where we look at things like epidemics in societies, food patterns in societies. We look at the bones and we figure out what were people doing and what kind of diseases did they have and how did they die and things like that. And after I lived in London for a while, I came back with this awesome book written by a royal surgeon called The Death of Kings. And it basically went through the history of monarchs from the time of Edward the Confessor to Queen Victoria, and it was his diagnoses of how all these people died. And I found as I was reading it, I didn't agree with him on a lot of them. I felt his diagnoses were not quite accurate, and that he was kind of he's covering his own ass because, royal surgeon, you got to be careful.
Yeah.
So, my husband and I would read a chapter out loud together each night because I was getting ready to take my family to London for the first time. And I thought this was kind of an interesting way to teach them history very quickly. So he started writing basically clickbait article headlines for some of these stories. So if you listen to the podcast, you'll see the titles are basically clickbait articles. And that's how it all started. We would write these down, we'd laugh about it. And we love podcasts. So one night we were doing this and I just said, hey, this would make a really fun podcast.
Yeah.
Like, let's teach people history in a very different way. People don't talk about what happens when a monarch or another historical leader dies, not just in the sense of, it starts a big war or something like that, but what happens to the actual body. Yeah. And we were just delighted in the fact that, frankly, a lot of these English monarchs their bodies, parts of them at least, disappeared.
Yeah.
And, as we know with Richard III, eventually he was found, and that's super cool. So we just wanted to come up with a way to teach people history through a very different lens and bring some humor into it along the way.
Yeah,
so we did.
It is a fun web podcast to listen to. Obviously, I was going to say my next question was going to be, obviously, with you being an American, why British? Because I know British history is very, I want to say glorified, but it is.
Yeah.
It's a bit different to. I mean, I guess it's because we've got the kings and queens and all that. Obviously, America have never really had a monarchy, have they? It's always been. Nope. I mean, apart from ours.
Mm-hmm.
But
right, for a brief time there, yeah.
Yeah, but it's always been presidents and stuff like that. So it's quite interesting to actually have an outsider looking in and being so into it as well.
Well, and I think so. We did our first season are all English monarchs, but we actually are going to be expanding.
Yeah.
So our final episode for this season will be Henry VIII, and that's probably going to be a two-parter because that's the one everybody wants to know. Did he have syphilis and all these things?
Oh, he probably did.
He probably didn't, actually.
Oh, okay.
So you'll have to listen to find out why.
I will listen to it. I will be listening.
But when we get done with that section, we'll be moving on. So we will be covering Egypt. We'll be covering Japan. We'll be covering other parts of Africa. We'll be covering Peru. And we will be covering American presidents. So we will be expanding. We just felt like starting with the British, like you say, Americans are really into it. We don't have kings and queens and princesses. And Americans
that's one of the things about England, isn't it? One of the draws from all over the world, the monarchy that we have.
Yes, there's still a monarchy. And a lot of people aren't aware of the fact that in this day and age, the monarchy really, they're not in control. They're not doing anything, right? So like Her Royal Majesty can approve something or sign off on something, but she's not the one actually making the laws anymore. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting to me that that's the way a lot of people still view the British monarchy. And so part of what we're trying to do is, like you say, as outsiders, we don't have to cover our asses. We're not going to offend the monarchy and get ourselves in social trouble or anything like that. So we're trying to bring to it a little bit more reality of, no, you know what? This king was actually a shithead. Or
well, most of them were.
Yeah. So it's been really interesting because, like, for example, in his book, Dr. Brewer said that Edward Longshanks was just such a terrific king. And we completely disagree with that. And we're like, if you're Scottish, you're going to completely disagree with that.
Yeah.
So we wanted to bring that outsider perspective into the mix. So.
Yeah, I mean, another thing that's, I mean, I've not said this yet, but I love my history, especially the gory history, like the Vikings and the Tudors and Stuarts and ancient Egypt and stuff like that, where it's very sort of I don't know the word, but it's like different, and I love all that sort of stuff. And whenever I find something out, it always makes me want to dig deeper and deeper. So I completely get where you're coming from. Like when you said that just then, it's like the British royals. I hope I don't get my head chopped off for this, but the British royals
they don't do that anymore.
No, they might make exception. But they. Like, I think Henry VIII was one as well. Like his picture, he only had a couple of pictures, and they were all sort of like I saw a program quite recently, and people were saying that actually he didn't really look much like that. Like that would have been a glorified picture of him. He would have had to sign off and say, yeah, that's okay to use. So actually, when we're looking at these pictures and you see them in history classes and stuff like that of some of the biggest monarchs, you're not actually getting a picture of them as they were. Yeah. Because obviously royalty used to eat a lot because they could. Their teeth were always really bad because the sugar and stuff like that. But obviously they weren't going to let an artist draw that.
Right.
So it was always made to look better than it was. So it's quite interesting to say that about having that sort of masquerade behind what really happened. Because, like you said, the victors, they say what happens and what went on, and they make the stories.
And when you have a new dynasty involved, of course they have to make themselves look really good, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to make previous dynasties look bad in some way, and you're going to elevate your own and make it really good looking. But I mean, you can do things like if you go to the Tower of London and you go see Henry VIII's armor, you can see how big he actually was.
Yeah.
And that blew my husband away the first time he saw that. He was just like, I had no idea how large this man actually got towards the end of his life, especially because you see his armor for when he was like 18, 19 years old, and he was quite fit. So things like that, things like being able to study the bones. So doing the studies on Richard III gave us so much information we did not have about his actual health and how bad was his scoliosis and how did he actually die and things like that. So it's just really hard to be able to do that. There are a lot of other bones that people in my world would love to explore, like are the bones of allegedly of the two princes in the tower, actually are they actually, well, they've been reinterred, they're in a sacred place. Getting permission to do that is not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah.
But I think not just we don't just owe it to the British people to know their own history, but to the rest of the world who get really mixed views of what that history was. So
yeah, well, see, again, like you're opening my eyes because I just assumed that we'd all get the same textbooks, pretty much. But obviously, you probably get less than we get, because we get taught about it a lot in schools. I don't know how much you touch on it because we do. I think we do like the Vikings and Tudors and all that sort of at year 6, sort of year 7 time, and then as we go into high school and all that, we start learning about like world history, like world wars and stuff like that. But obviously you lot will learn about that as well. But I don't know if where we learning about our monarchy and at school, you're learning about your rights and amendments and your presidents and stuff like that.
Yep.
So yeah, it's quite interesting.
Well, here where we are in year 8, our version of year 8, they start with just Utah history. And then when they get into year 9 and 10, when they're in high school, basically, that's when they start actually looking at more of the United States history. And it's still deeply flawed. I mean, we're in a state that was founded by people who came in and invaded native populations and outright massacred native populations. They don't cover that in their history classes.
Right. Yeah.
And when we get into world history, it's always America saved everybody. They don't look at the really strong stance that Great Britain had in World War II, for example, and how hard you all fought. And
we get told we basically got taught that you turned up late and then claimed the victory. It's like you're a bit late. Where have you been? Yeah, we won the war for you.
That's not untrue. Yeah, and students here don't learn about things like how the Royal Air Force worked, or even know that places in the UK were getting bombed.
Yeah, see, that's what I mean. That's where the internet is pretty good, isn't it? Because it has opened up that whole can of worms where you can just pick and choose what you listen to and all that sort of stuff. There's 3 of you in the podcast. How do you know all the other 2? One's your husband, right?
Yes, Mike is my husband, and Amanda's my sister.
Right, so you're all family.
Yes, and she actually she's never listened to podcasts before, and we asked her to just be a guest on one of our episodes because we were talking about food, and she's a chef. So she came on and she was our guest, and it was like this clicking moment of, this is it, the pieces are complete, and we need her to be here permanently because she just added that extra little bit of energy we felt like we were kind of missing.
Yeah.
So now she's on permanently, and she still doesn't really listen to other podcasts. She listens to ours to hear the finished product, but it's just never really been her thing. My dad listens to a lot of podcasts, so she'll hear his sometimes when she's over there working. and her boyfriend listens to a lot of podcasts, so sometimes she'll hear a bit. But it's kind of funny to me that she doesn't listen. She had never listened to any before, and yet she just took it up really naturally. So.
Yeah. I mean, I had a feeling there was a connection because you do connect really well together. It's not like you're just three random people thrown together by circumstance. Do you know what I mean? Like, you do have sort of a good connection that you work together well with. So yeah, and so obviously this is the first podcast you've worked on as well. It's not like you've done it before, but you are some sort of teacher. You're a teacher of sorts, yeah. So you're quite knowledgeable and come across quite professional because of that, I guess. That helps.
That, and I think it helps that I grew up acting, and
so it's an act.
Well, not exactly. It's just this idea of being a presence in front of an audience is something I'm really comfortable with.
Yeah.
I've never had problems. Even before I got a job as a professor, I did a lot of guest lectures in other classrooms, and I was an assistant instructor with a professor on the campus where I was attending school. And so I just kind of got used to it, to teaching people things.
Yeah. And
I'm doing so in a way that keeps them engaged, because nobody wants a super boring lecture, right? So for me, it was just that. Mike, you can kind of hear it as the podcast goes along. He starts out kind of rough and quiet, and he's kind of finding his voice.
He still kind of stays out when he's not needed, though, doesn't he? Like,
he does. He's such a champ. He's so just endlessly patient, because Amanda and I mean, this is just how the two of us are.
Yeah.
Anytime we're together, it's just that we're not.
Well, you've known each other longer as well, haven't you?
Yeah, so, and we're loud and we're obnoxious, and that's just kind of how we are. And I was convinced, because she came with us when I took my family to the UK back in, when was it, May. I was convinced she'd get us somehow kicked out. That she would be so loud. I mean, I love her to pieces. It's not a bad thing, but she's just so over the top energetic and boisterous, and she and my son are the same way together. And I was convinced they would somehow get us banned from, at the very least, like, I don't know, Oxford or something, because I took them all over. And I was just
I think you'd have to do something pretty bad to get banned from anywhere in England. I honestly don't think people get kicked out unless they have to, really.
I mean, and I'm telling you, and I was convinced that somehow she would find a way. But no, it turned out it was a great trip. Nothing untoward happened. But cool. So there's definitely a lot of chemistry between the three of us, because we have spent so much time together. I mean, I've known her 27 years now, and Michael and I have been best friends for 10 years, and so yeah.
Okay, so we'll move on to personality questions now. Just so you know, just where can people listen to your podcast? Is it on all platforms, or?
Yeah, it's basically on everything. We're on Spotify, Google Play, Castbox, Podcoin, iTunes, iHeartRadio, TuneIn. I mean, it's pretty hard to not find us at this point. So
okay, so if you're into your gruesome history, not just England anymore, British anymore, Monarchs and Malarkey I keep saying website podcast. Go and check it out, guys. So the personality questions, we have numbers between 1 and 350. Pick a number and it'll throw up 3 names, and then you can kiss, marry, kill, or snog, marry, avoid, whatever one you want to do.
Okay, pick any number. 299.
299. Right, we have interesting. Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, and Xi Jinping. I'm guessing that's Korea, or that's quite a good one to throw up, actually.
Oh man. Okay.
I can't believe you've pulled that one out of the bag, to be fair. I was like, what?
I know. I'm kind of nauseated now. Let's see. Well, I would kiss the last one. I would I would marry Vladimir just because I don't know. I would hope I could get my hooks into him and make him change his mind about some things.
Yeah, he's
And I
very
would definitely,
stern.
yeah, I would definitely kill Trump.
Okay. Okay.
Am I allowed to say that? I'm gonna like have secret
Looks
service
like we're both
knocking on
going to
my
be
door
in the
now.
Tower of London. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure it'll be okay. Okay. So the next one is describe yourself in 3 words,
Mm.
or you can,
Tenacious.
or you. All right. Okay.
Oh,
Go.
okay. Tenacious, strong, crazy.
Tenacious, strong, and crazy. They're three very strong words.
Hmm.
Okay, and finally, 2 games. As you're a little bit of a gamer, 2 games. Any games you want. You can play for the rest of your life, but you're not allowed to play anything else. What would you
Oh,
choose?
okay. That's that's kind of easy and kind of hard at the same time. So definitely, Lord of the Rings: Battle for Middle Earth. It's a PC game, and I love it. I could play that forever. I definitely could play that one forever. Oh, a second one. Let me think. You know what? I'm going to say Final Fantasy X because as much as I've played it, I have never quite nailed the Jex shot. So if I had an entire lifetime to only play that and one other game, maybe I could probably finally get that stupid Jex shot perfect.
It's going to take you that long.
Oh man, I don't know what it is. Like my hand-eye coordination is not great or something,
Yeah,
but I have played through that game multiple times, and a lot of the time, I'm not gonna lie, I've had my brother come over and do the
and help
Jex
you
shot
out.
for me
Right.
because I can't do
Okay.
it.
Okay. And that's it for the personality questions. We do a segment where we do shout outs for anyone who's supported you or helped you out along the way. It's normally 3 to 5 names. We put it in the description under the video as well, so you can add their Twitters and YouTubes or podcasts wherever. I'll put all them down there. So if you just give us 3 to 5 names that you want to shout out, and we'll add them in as well.
Okay, well, I have to shout out the OddPod Squad on Twitter because the OddPod Squad has been so great at not just supporting us but supporting each other. There's just so much
Yeah.
interaction. It's been fabulous. And Kate from This Podcast is Haunted, she's been brilliantly supportive. She's been a really good friend, and she's just good people. So let's see. There are so many people, I don't even know. Oh, so my dad, Mark, and my brother, Jay, because they did our art and our music, and I had no idea how integral that would be to our podcast, but it
That's one
works really
thing.
well.
The art of the podcast. Before I know, sorry, I'm cutting in on you a bit here.
No, it's
Is
okay.
that Harold Godwinson?
Is that what?
Harold Godwinson.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, most definitely. That's what started
The
this
arrow
whole
in the
thing.
eye.
Yeah, the arrow in the eye. So yeah, I told my dad what I wanted, and I thought he'd make something just really basic and kind of cartoony, and then he came up with this brilliant artwork, and I was just blown away. He's so talented.
Yeah,
So,
it is. It's very good. It looks very professional. But I saw it and I was like, that's got to be Harold. It's got to be.
yes.
It can't
Oh
be a
yeah.
fluke. Okay, so is there anyone else you want to give a shout out to?
Just my family in general. The fact that I have 2 family members on the podcast with me, and my mom is just a champ. Like she's so funny. She was like, I don't know how to listen to a podcast, but I'll listen to yours. And so, and my
It's just
kids
like the
have been
radio.
my kids have been really super awesome too. When we record, they come hide down here in the basement and just hang out and just let us do our thing. So.
Yeah.
And you for having me on here. This has been really really cool.
You're more than welcome. I've been looking forward to getting you on because like I said, I do like my history. I don't know a lot about history. I didn't really like history until I left school, which is weird.
That's typical. That's really typical.
Yeah, it's like when you're forced to learn it, it's different to when I find, like I said, when I watch something or hear of something, that's when I sort of like get my claws and go. I start asking questions and I look deeper into it and stuff like that. Like I went out when the Vikings series came on. I knew a little bit about it anyway because I loved Norse mythology anyway. But I learned so much about that just by, and I ended up buying all the Chronicle books.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the big thick ones that literally chronicle the times, which were amazing. But yeah, this show is mainly to highlight people like yourselves who are really giving a service. Like even though it's something you enjoy doing, it's still you should still be recognized for helping other people understand things, and so the whole point in Just Talking is that we want to give a platform for people like yourselves and people who are creating and supporting other people to show their own stuff and what they're into, and hopefully help them grow a little bit. So yeah, you're more than welcome to come on. I've enjoyed having you on, and yeah, it's been good talking to you.
Yeah, you too.
So okay, guys, if you've enjoyed this episode, you know what to do. Hit that like button. If you're new around here, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future uploads. And for today, that is it from me and Danielle. Thank you very much for coming, Danielle. See you later.
Thank you. Yep.